Boom. All right, everybody. Thanks for jumping on to another episode of Expert Mentors Live. Man, super excited for today's call. I know, we're on episode 16 right now. And, we've done a lot of high level stuff, a lot of leadership stuff, a lot of cool marketing stuff. You've got the wizards, you've got, Kyle's amazing. Daniel's amazing. We just have had some great episodes, and man, I'm kind of excited that we're actually getting down into the trenches today with Mike. And, that's what Expert Mentors is really all about. And, really just tapping into the horsepower of the fast forward movement and the Honey Badger Nation, and just really coming together and pulling, those that have so much value to add back into the community. And it's been amazing. And the lineup in weeks to come is just stellar, and I'm super excited to have the opportunity to be a part of this and add value back to all of you guys. So, Mike's definitely diving into something that needs to all be a critical component of our business, and those that have accelerated their growth. Just like you did, Mike, coming in, within 4 years, hitting the gas and getting to 300. We've seen it so many times that those that are disciplined to this pillar inside of their business and consistent with it have really been able to accelerate that growth. And so, man, I'm super pumped to have you on today and adding value back to the network. So welcome.
Thank you, brother. It's great to be here. Great to be a part of the Honey Badger Nation, man. And I'm stoked to hopefully add some value today.
Sweet. So, any other context that you want to give? I mean, you did hit the gas pedal coming in and just absolutely accelerate it to 300. I mean, most people, go years. I mean, I think it took Kinder 7-8 years to get up over that mark, and obviously helping Michael get to that point in half the time. And just like I said, it's a common theme, and so those that have been able to accelerate. So I would love for you to give a little more context for everybody jumping on the call with us.
Yeah, for sure. So for everybody that's watching and listening, my business initially was predicated on the expireds, and so I mean, a quick story about myself is I've actually had a real estate license since 2002. Right out of the gate, I went to work with a top agent in the area, just kind of as a buyer's agent. And everybody knows what happened in 2007. So anyway, bad story there. I ended up, trying to make real estate work for a couple years after that. And we ended up short selling our house. I had a new baby and ended up back in corporate America. So that was 2009. So 2009, from 2009 to 2014, I worked in corporate America. Well, in 2013, in November, I started calling the expired leads. So I had an outside sales job. So what I would do is, before I started into my outside sales job, I would come in at 8 o'clock, and the first hour of the day before I started my other job, I would just call expireds. And so when I started calling expireds, I started, I didn't have any expectations, man. And maybe that was part of why I had some success, is because I just did it, and I did it persistently. And so what ended up happening is that first year, 2013, fast forward to May of 2014, I ended up where I had 44 listings in May of 2014. So I went to my wife and I just said, honey, listen, it's costing me more money to be in corporate America than it is for me to be in real estate. And she said, have at it, man. And she was very encouraging. So I quit my corporate job. That first year, I went out and sold 57 houses. That was 2014. So that was my first year full-time back in the business as a listing agent and a buyer's agent. So of those 57 listings, 41 of them were expired.
Holy moly.
Yeah, I did not have a big database. We actually live in a town that my wife grew up in. So I didn't have a huge database here. So really the only thing I could go out and do was just to crash the phones. And so that's what I did. So the first year, went out and sold 57 houses. Like I said, a large majority of those were all expired leads. And so I just, moving into that second year, I knew that that would be a big part of my business, is in a driving force in my business, because I knew moving forward, when I started to talk to people like you and people like Jay, obviously, and Mike, and being a part of NAEA early on, and Jay was a big mentor of mine from afar. So it really helped me out. You talked about, Jay getting there, it taking him maybe 7 years. But the great thing about what Jay and Mike did is they kind of laid out the plan. They laid out the roadmap for people like, for people like me to follow. So they made it easy. So I could go from, from A to Z much quicker than somebody usually could, because I had the roadmap.
Yep.
So, back to the whole expired game, I knew it would be a big part of my business. So the next thing for me was, and you'll probably resonate with this, because I'm sure you've heard people talk about it before, John, but when I first started calling expireds, like, I didn't have any money, you know what I mean? I wasn't spending any money on real estate. So what I was doing, dude, is I was literally going to the MLS and I was pulling the expired leads and then going to the white pages and looking for their numbers. And so I was doing that, man. I literally was, and it was working, man. So I ran with that. And so what I started to do is I started making some money. And so, the first thing I did was I bought a system that provided me that data. And the first system I hooked up with was RedX. And this was back in, like I said, back in 2014, 2015. So hooked up with RedX, that made things even easier, because, I was taking money that I was making and investing back into the business to make my life easier, give me more time to do what I needed to be doing, which was at that time prospecting. And so, we started doing more expireds. So as I continued to list more expired listings, then it was just about like, how could I scale that, right? So then we were talking about scaling. And so what I want to talk to everybody here about today is, I don't want to talk to everybody about scaling a business, but I want to talk specifically about how expireds were an integral part of me scaling my business. And so why I think that's important is because, just as you said in the initial part of the discussion today, is that it should play an integral part of your business. And in fact, about 33% of your business should be represented by outbound, and 33 by inbound, and then 33 by your sphere. And so this should represent hopefully a large majority of your business, FSBOs and expireds. So we'll dig into that a little bit. I think the most critical piece that we'll talk about today, and I have I'm going to save this until the end, John, and you can remind me, because I'm not going to give away my biggest secret right now, because I want people to watch this. But why don't we talk first, because I think it's the most important, about, phone calls, because as I said before, I started making phone calls, right? So I had the data provided by RedX, and so I was just making phone calls. And now you have all this different stuff like email follow-up, text, social media, doing mailers and all that stuff. And I definitely want to talk about that, but let's start with the most important thing, making phone calls. So I would just, I guess, and I'm not sure, everybody's market's different, but when we would get the expireds delivered, typically every morning I would wake up, and the first thing I would do is call the new expireds, right? And so I had learned early on that about 70% of expireds list with the first agent that they talk to. And so, I was going to try to be that first agent, because I didn't have a lot of sales under my belt. And I just wanted to play the odds, right? I didn't have a lot of experience, and I didn't have a lot of sales under my belt. So I was just playing the odds early on. So I wanted to be the first person to make contact with that individual.
Perfect.
So, the first thing that I did is I went to my computer at my home office, and, it doesn't matter where you call, everybody can find a different quiet place. But the first thing I did was I went to my office, and I shut the door, and I just started cranking out the dials, man. So I loaded up the dialer, a dialer is another piece, obviously, when you talk about scaling. But then I just sat down and made the calls, and I did it consistently, man. I did it every morning, and I would call until I was all done with the new expireds, and then I would go in to do follow-up expireds. So, the important component of that is the fact that, you're constantly building a database. And, I actually have done some NAEA training, expired training, and learned some interesting statistics about when conversions happen. And I think that, so 70% of expireds list with the first agent that they talk to, and typically they convert between weeks 9 and 13. So if you can play those odds, so right, you wanted to be the first person that they talk to, and then you wanted to have some sort of follow-up and plan, so that you could stay on their radar, so that when they decided to relist in weeks between weeks 9 and 13, that they only thought of you, right? Right. So my secret weapon up first was the phone, right? And that's all I had, because that's all I knew. So what I would do, generally speaking, is just I would touch base with the data provided from RedX, and then I would enter them into Top Producer, and then schedule some sort of a follow-up plan. And initially I was doing a handwritten thank you card out to the expired, and then I would just put that in the mail out front. I've since moved on to a different platform, and we'll talk about that when we get into mail. But the frequency also is something that I think is important. So, you're not going to connect with the same people at all times a day. It's just not going to happen. So if I wasn't on an appointment, I was disciplined enough to call that person 3 times every day until I made contact. So if I couldn't get them in the morning, I had a follow-up scheduled for lunch. And if I couldn't get them at lunch, I had a follow-up scheduled for early evening. So sometime between 4 and 6 o'clock. And my contact rate was pretty good doing that. And, like I said, I think that there's this great myth out there, and that, that you call somebody and you just immediately close them. And I think there's been a paradigm shift. I think that, when you're building rapport, or you're building a relationship with a consumer, it's more of a concierge type approach. It's how much value can you add, you know what I mean, before somebody's going to decide to do business with you. It's what was the old adage? Nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. You know what I mean? And that is actually true. So while there may be the quote unquote closer out there, that just wasn't me. So I think a lot of people will relate to that. Like I was never pressuring people into close, but what I did do with great tenacity is just follow up like a crazy person. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So if somebody told me to call them in 3 months, I was calling them in, I would send a piece of a mail out, like a thank you card, and I would call them back in a week. And I would say, hey, I just wanted to make sure you got my thank you card, right? So just checking in, because you never know when somebody's they change their plans. They're like, oh yeah, we've been thinking about it a week, and I think we're ready to make a go at it again. You know what I mean? I had those phone calls, and and then I would schedule another follow-up and another reason to follow up with them, in a couple weeks after that. And I can tell you this, I made way more money and set far more appointments in the follow-up than I ever did making the initial phone call. But the true power and the value of the initial phone call is that's where you get them to know you. That's where you find out what their timeline is, and that's how you find out what your follow-up schedule is going to look like.
Right.
So that is the value of making that first phone call. And I'll tell you that the other value of that is, if you are the first person to talk to them in your marketplace, then they're not mad. You know what I mean? If you call them at 10 o'clock or 3 o'clock and you are the 9th or 10th or 30th agent to make contact, you're going to get some pushback. I promise you, because now they're in a headspace where, they're much less receptive. Their train of thought at that point is, what more value are you going to offer me than the 15 agents that called me before you did? You know what I mean? So it's very hard to get into a conversation with them at that point if they're already mad. So anybody taking notes here, take a note that you definitely want to be that. You want to make that initial contact. You want to be the first person to talk to them, because they're going to be more willing to reveal information with you or to you that they probably won't reveal to the 14 or 15 agents that are going to call after you. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So, so frequency, again, you want to make sure you call until you make contact. So that's morning, lunch, and then early evening. The systems to use. So for phone calls now, I talked a little bit about a dialer. I was PEC dialing before. Obviously, we've moved into a different space because we've reinvested some of that money back into the business. So currently we're using a system called Vulcan 7. The great thing about that system is they're, providing usually between 3 and 5 phone numbers. And sometimes on occasion, they even provide an email address. This is not a commercial for Vulcan 7. I know there are other systems that do that. And the great thing also is that there's a dialer built into that system, so that, we have seats for our inside salespeople now. But the dialer isn't. Oh, go ahead, John.
Is Vulcan providing the data? Or are you still getting data from another source like Redx?
Vulcan is providing the data for us right now, and we're looking at some other options. Like, I don't know if you've ever heard of a system called Bellis Link for skip tracing. So sometimes we can't get data on everybody, and we just want to make sure that we've got data on everybody because we want to give ourselves that opportunity. So Bellis Link, and that's BELLESLINK.com, is a link for skip tracing, and they do a membership. I believe it is for $9.99, and then you get credits for however many people you load into their system. So, but Vulcan's data, we found, at least in our area of Southwest Ohio, is pretty darn good. And so, we've just been using that for the most part. And then, and then we use the dialer component of that, which I think obviously is very important, because, you can segment the data. So Vulcan 7 every morning, I believe I want to say at 6:50, they deliver the FSBO and expired data to us each and every day. And so, we're in here, first thing making those phone calls. But, obviously that is the most important component. And there's really no way around that, as much as I know, people are people have challenge. Some of people's, let's face it, some of their biggest challenges is that fear of rejection. And certainly I think everybody deals with that. I think, some people just deal with it differently. But the phone call is always, from an expired perspective, man, it's just going to be the most important thing you could do, is just to get on the phones and try to make contact with them that way. It's really not a scalable system to try and door knock expireds, especially if you're getting a lot. Now, I will say that in most markets, there aren't a whole heck of a lot of expireds anymore, at least new expireds. And so what I would say to them is, if they really want to make a big impact on an expired who was new and they didn't have a lot of places to go or a lot of people to call, is deliver them something. And, so another thing that I did is I used to go to the UPS store, and I would get, they'll give you envelopes for free. The UPS store will actually give you envelopes for free. So you can go there and ask for their overnight envelopes. And so I used to go to UPS, and I would get, they would hand me 15 or a dozen, overnight envelopes. And then I would put, before I had any, I had a seller packet or anything, I would put a really nice CMA in there. I would write them a letter and then put my business card on it, and then drop that off on their front door. So if there was an expired that I really, really wanted, like a higher price point or something I knew would sell if I got the listing, that's how I would handle that. Or if I didn't have data to make contact.
Gotcha. Cool. No, I love that. And I think you could also add in, any items of that kind of create authority for you. So if you've got a book, or, in the NAEA tear sheets, which just kind of gives some credibility. Also, leveraging in third-party endorsements, testimonials, success stories, even, right? That talk about how you guys help net people that expired, right? So giving those case studies along with testimonials just gives you more additional credibility in that thud pack, that if you are leaving that package that you don't have data on.
Yeah, and obviously the seller packet then looks a little different than the seller packet now. I mean, now we have a couple magazines that we include in that packet with a professional copywritten letter, a business card. I mean, it looks really nice and it goes out. most of this stuff is actually overnighted now. Like I'm not really going to the UPS store. Now, I will encourage our agents to go to the UPS store and if they're interested in doing that. Just again, because it's not that any one thing is going to change your business. It's when you do it with consistency and persistence that it changes your business. So, we just want to get them in the habit of doing that.
And I hope everybody's that's on with us live here, and then also those listening to the recording understands that, what Mike was sharing was like, you don't have to have all the professional photos and books and authority and magazines. Man, just pick up the phone and make calls, right? Make the dang phone calls. And that's, what Mike was sharing that really, started the whole thing. And so, you don't have to have a dialer. You don't have to have that. You can get, RedX, you can go get their Onyx data for what, $130 a month and, pick up your cell phone and start making phone calls. So, don't limit, I just don't want people to pick up the message, not to limit their productivity on thinking that it has to be perfect. Take action and build upon, just like you did.
Yep. I couldn't agree more. And just to add into that, I think people always overthink it. Like they're always getting ready to get ready. You know what I mean? It's like, just go out and do it, man, because the people that are taking actions are the ones that are getting listings right now. You know what I mean? It's the people that are taking action with consistency. Those are the ones that are still getting listings, even in a market where it's tough to get listings. So yeah, I would say that don't fall victim to the analysis paralysis or paralysis analysis. Just start picking up the phone and having meaningful conversations. People always wonder, what am I going to say? What do you say? And they're always giving themselves a reason not to make the phone calls, when in reality, you already know. Listen, if your house expired, if your mom's house expired, could you go in and have a conversation with your mom about her house expiring? If you can do that, then you can talk to anybody about it, right?
Right.
So you're right. I think it really is just about taking action. And if all you have right now is yourself and your cell phone, then you've got enough tools to go in and start taking expired listings. That's the bottom line.
Absolutely. The story that has always resonated with me, and for anybody on the call or listening to the recording that has, spent any time or followed Jay in any way, I'm sure the stories come up where he talks about the prime example of talking with an expired that hung up on him like 3 or 4 times, that he kept calling back, staying in the right frame of mind, and was just like genuine. And see, I think that's another key component to come from, right? Just like you said, can you have that conversation with your grandmother? Can you have that conversation with your mom, and really come from out of your head and into your heart and really care, and coming from that absolute place. And in the way Jay tells that story, if you pick up on one of the things, is that Jay, 2 things, he genuinely knew that he could help this guy, and he genuinely was interested in finding out, what he could do in helping that guy reconnect to what it was, the entire reason that they put their home on the market in the first place. And it's just like, people lose sight of that, especially when they go through the process and they quit, man. They give up on the goal of why they were selling the home in the first place. And if you can help them reconnect emotionally back to that impact, you're able to reconnect them back to their goals. And now you're going to open them up to be able to have that conversation to, like you said, determine the timing and motivation of where you can step in and help them, rekindle that goal, why they were moving in the first place.
Yeah. And, just to add on to that, I think that, people get uncomfortable with making phone calls because they think they're calling to take something. They think they're calling to get a commission check. And that's the wrong mindset to call from. You have to call from a mindset of, I have something of value to give you. It's almost your duty to make that phone call, right? And so, every time I'd make a phone call, it was like, I would call and I would say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, this is Mike Wall. Hey, can you help me out? I'm a little confused here. I'm pulling up the information on your home in the computer, and, it's showing up as an expired listing. Is that correct? Or did you get the property sold? You know what I mean? And so, and they want to help you. Then they want to, they're like, no, it didn't sell. It didn't sell. And so it's how you're engaging them. I think, obviously is something that you get to learn more of over time. But so why I don't like to go into a lot of scripts and dialogues with people is because I think that we're happy to provide our scripts and dialogues to anybody that wants them, anybody that's listening today. But typically why I don't get into that is because people will go out and say, well, I've got to learn this script or I've got to learn this dialogue before I can make the calls. And that's not reality. So, obviously we've talked a little while now about, the phone portion of it. So some other notes that I made here and some other things that we're doing now is we're doing email marketing, we're doing text marketing, we're doing social, and we're doing mailers. The thing I started doing after making the phone calls was I started doing the mailers. And I had signed up. I know Mike's got a great postcard system. They're sending out and he just sent that over to us. And that is available, by the way. I know Holly sent that to me last week because we're doing training right now, or the NEE training for expireds in our office here. So that is available and I know anybody in our group, Michael, the Mike Reese postcards, Holly will send those out, I believe, to anybody. Is that right?
System. Michael built his business and accelerated, did what Jay did, to that $1 million revenue mark in less than half the time. And he built it on the back of what, what Mike's sharing here with you guys today. And definitely the postcards were instrumental in making that happen. And it's the force multiplier effect, right? And that's what you're getting into right now. It's making the calls, it's hitting them in their mailbox, it's hitting them in their inbox, and it's hitting them, via text, via, Facebook Messenger. It's all of it. And when you do a little bit more, you just continue to get a bigger and bigger lift. And that's the strategy behind it.
Yep. It's land, air, sea attack, man. That's what it is. And that, again, I didn't do anything great. I just took action, man. All of these resources are available to everyone watching or listening to this webinar, just like they were to me. In fact, they're probably a lot better now. So, because everybody's had some time to refine and modify them to the objections that they were getting. So the whole mailer system, I think is again, part of it is the copyright, but really it's more so about doing it. You know what I mean? It's really about taking action. And I keep saying that, I know, but that's the reality because I don't want people to overthink it. So, we were sending out some postcards. We did a campaign where we would sell your house in 77 days or we would sell it for free, right? We did that. So that was our USP, our unique selling proposition. I know some people have the guaranteed buy. There are different ones out there, obviously, and so just whatever you resonate with, you may want to look into that further.
Right.
But we also are now using a company called Bond, and Bond actually provides a handwritten card. You can upload your list to Bond, and so Bond has a machine that will handwrite your cards out and then mail them for you. And they will emboss the card with a nice logo on the top and then mail it directly to the prospect. So those are really cool. And I think the website is bond.ca. So if you want to check that out. So we use Bond for mailers as well. And then,
cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we're using the postcards as well. So that was from a mailer perspective. That what we were doing. The consistency, like I said, it just has to be there. You've heard stories before about, people sending out a mailer or even two mailers and not getting any results. And they just, they quit doing the mailer when in reality, they know, if you know what we know that, if you're doing a mail campaign, you want to have at least 12 months into it before you decide to give up on
Absolutely.
it. So it's just, it's really just about consistency. I love the force multiplier reference because you're right. Everything that I'm talking about in today's webinar is really just the full force multiplier. And so we were doing the mailers. Obviously, we're making the phone calls. Then if we can get email data, which, sometimes we can, sometimes we can't. And that's why we were looking into that Bellis Link program for skip tracing some of the numbers or some of the data we were getting.
Okay.
But if you can get an email address, I am still hooked up with Infusionsoft right now. We're using a program that actually is provided by Greg Harrelson.
Yep.
This is a very, very intricate program. This is something that I think we paid like $2,500 for. Again, man, you don't need all those bells and whistles. You really don't. We're at a point in our business where we're able to invest in that, and it makes sense for us to do it. But if you're sending out if you're sitting on your computer and you're writing down an email, that's good, man. That's the way you start all this. That's the way you get the ball rolling. That's the way you generate the capital in order to buy stuff like Infusionsoft. You know what I mean? To make things easier for you.
So I'm going to do a disclaimer here real quick, Mike. Anybody on the webinar or listen to the recording, do not get Infusionsoft unless you have a conversation with Mike or myself or Jay. There's a right time and there's a wrong time. And so that's my disclaimer. If you want to have
and sometimes it's never right. You know what I mean? So like everybody works, with a different piece of technology. The disclaimer, you're right. Infusionsoft is a very, very complicated piece of software. And certainly you want to think that through. And we did this 2 years ago. So now HubSpot's come out. I mean, there are some different mechanisms for email marketing to expireds.
Right. Absolutely.
So again, it's just about, I want to be fully transparent to the audience so they kind of know what we're doing.
Cool.
And, able to answer any questions about that. So, with the emails, again, it's just about consistency. When I talk about, doing expireds, it's like when I really decided to niche into expireds, like that's what I wanted to be great at, man. You know what I mean? Because once I started to see how much it meant to my business, like it wasn't that I wanted just to go ahead and add in buyer lead generation with Boomtown or Commissions Inc., right? When I made money, I wanted to go deeper in expireds because that's what I was already good at. You know what I mean? So once I felt like I had mastered my expireds, then, we added in like buyer lead generation and stuff like that. But all that money, John, it all came from expireds. So
that's what, man, I love that you just said that. And I hope everybody listening caught it, is like, what are you really, really good at? And are you maximizing and squeezing all of the juice out of what you're already the best at? And we're so quick to want to jump to the next thing without really maximizing the one thing that's working really well for us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, and again, I don't want people to overthink it and worry about the message. It's just the fact that you're taking action really is all that matters. So, we talked about the phone calls, we talked about the mailers, we talked about the email, conversions. I think what you happen is when you go down the list, like if you talk about phone calls, you're probably going to have the highest level of conversions to appointments on the phones. And it used to be mailers, man. We used to get a really good response off mailers, but we're now getting a lot more traction with like text messaging. And people are starting to respond more to text messaging, and text messaging is moving up the list, at least to initiate that dialogue. You know what I mean? So we were sending out text messages, and then social media obviously is a big component as well. I don't know how many of you have, or at least work through, I know most of us at EXP are working through Gmail, and Gmail has an extension called Rapportive, and it's Rapportive. I think if you just go to rapportive.com, you can download the extension into Google Chrome. And once you download that extension into Google Chrome, every time you open your email and you put someone's email address in to send them an email, to the right-hand side, it will actually pull up their LinkedIn profile and allow you to connect with them on LinkedIn. So we would do that. We would enter their email address into Gmail every single time. If we could connect with them on LinkedIn, and we would try to make a connection on LinkedIn. I wasn't like, I'm not sure if I'm a proponent yet of the whole, like just having someone's email address or finding them on Facebook and trying to connect. Cause I don't feel like that you're adding enough value to say, I'm willing to friend request somebody. You know what I mean? Now, if you've had a good dialogue with somebody, I wouldn't be opposed to you connecting with them on Facebook. But just since you have their email and their name from an expired list, I don't think that that's reason enough to try and connect with somebody on Facebook. That's just my personal opinion. There's probably people watching this webinar that are having all kinds of luck doing that. So if it's working, keep doing it. But we're just not at that point yet. Now, what we will do is we will take email addresses and cell phone numbers and do some retargeting. And what I mean by that is, we might run our unique selling proposition as an ad to a retargeting audience based on the information or the data provided from Vulcan 7 or Bellis Link. So that is that is one of those components. Again, it's a little harder to scale unless they're clicking the ad. The beauty of Facebook is they don't necessarily have to click the ad to know that that is working. Because what may happen is you may be running a Facebook ad, you may have sent a piece of mail, and you may have connected with them on LinkedIn, and then they call your phone, right? So how do you gauge that? But that goes back to what we were talking about before. That's the power of that force multiplier, right? Yep. And heck, I mean, if you're listing 2, 3, 4, 5 expireds a month or a week, and they're coming in from a phone call, but they saw your social media ad, they got your email. Who cares? You know what I mean? They're still coming in as new business. Now, obviously, as you get bigger, that's something that you'll want to look more into, so you can make sure that wherever you're spending your money, that you can double down on that if you need to, and if you're not generating any ROI on money that you are spending, that you can pull back. But yeah, man, that's really the whole part of this. I mean, the most important component, I think, is just doing it consistently and being persistent about it. And then, making sure that you take action. The action is the biggest component, I think.
Yeah, 100%. And it is, it's that consistent action. And, I wrote that down a couple times here, just in my notes, and hopefully everybody did the same, is that it's the discipline to make the calls, the consistency each and every day. And, I always reference back to, so Caleb Pearson was, part of our mastermind. Caleb's in Charleston, and he had the similar accelerated growth, and he built his whole business around calling. And as he continued to grow and grow his business, he would bring people in, but that was just that was the culture that he created, in that, we are going to make calls consistently each and every day. And as he's kind of transitioned a little bit out of production, he's not making, the 2 to 3 hour calls every morning with the guys, but he is there every morning making 30 to 45 minute to 60 minute of those calls. And then he's on about his day, but he's still building that culture. And I get Jay on the phone, you talk, even with Wally, and it's just everybody that we've seen over the last 10 years. I mean, everybody that stays consistent in the consistent action of making the phone calls, they just excel, man. They just accelerate, and they can work through any market, any situation.
Yep. That's it, man. And I know, it's so funny because people are jumping on these webinars and they do all this training and stuff, and, they're looking for that magic bullet. And the reality of it is, we've already talked about it. The magic bullet is action, man. That is the magic bullet, because the reality of it is you're going to hear no, you're going to get hung up on. And, if you're not, then you're not making enough phone calls. And so, I've heard all the excuses, man. You know what I mean? It's like, there's not enough expireds in my market. Well, okay. So pull up expireds from 3 years ago, pull up expireds from 2 years ago. You can't tell me that there's not expireds in your market to call. You know what I mean? It's just, it's what is your mindset? And I think people have a tendency to coach skill set before mindset. And so what we have is we have a bunch of terrified, skilled workers who aren't doing their job because they've never been taught the mindset. You know what I mean? That was completely skipped over. In corporate America, they're constantly teaching skill set. And the reality of it is these people, they're skilled and they don't have the right mindset. And so if you can get them in the right mindset, then it's time to teach them the skill set. You know what I mean? People reverse engineer that. So we try to teach the mindset here. And I think once you get the mindset right, if you can get somebody dialed in to why it's beneficial to make those phone calls every day and see the results that come through it, that's when you can really make some, some major waves.
Absolutely, man. Agree. Absolutely agree. Mindset's everything. It's all in the thinking, and then into their beliefs and their belief system, and being able to really tap into that is absolutely critical. So, Mike, I'll let you keep rolling. Any other key points that you want to hit on, but I want to let everybody know on the call, if you guys have any questions for Mike, throw it in the chat or throw it in the Q&A. We'd love to make sure that you guys are crystal clear on what it is that you need, to help you guys move forward, and anything mindset, tool wise. I know you had kind of talked about, just kind of recap, leveraging Vulcan 7. Gave a couple awesome links for some data. The bellislink.com to check out. There's I know for us, we use Mojo and, Onyx data from RedX. So you have to find kind of what works in your market. I kind of mentioned Caleb. Caleb's Vulcan 7 guy as well. It works well for him in Charleston. For us here in Dallas, especially for us in Lawton, the Onyx data from RedX works the best. And so some markets, in Lawton, they don't need Mojo. There's only a handful of expireds every day. So they, number one dial. But one thing I want to really emphasize what Mike talked about is that it's the absolute, we always say it, right? Fortune's in the follow-up, and it's absolutely so true. So having a system, a tool, a platform, you guys at EXP, you have KV Core, get it in there, set a next action date for a reminder to be able to kind of call, to work through. So, Mike, Jennifer was asking on the mailers, you talked about bond. What was that? Bond.ca. Is that?
Bond.ca. Yeah.
Okay. Bond.ca.
And they do our handwritten thank you cards for us. So we can just, if you go to the website, you can set up an account and you can tell them exactly what you want to say. And if anybody wants to reach out to me, I'm happy to provide any of that data. My email address is mike@loveohioliving.com. So if you want anything from our expired vault, email me and I will send you everything that we have. And so all the text from our emails, all the text from our mailers, everything is on there. So I'm happy to provide that to anybody on the Honey Badger team or anybody who's thinking about joining EXP.
Sweet. Lewis was asking on using Vulcan, 40% of the business from expireds and canceled, desperate need of print, text, and email campaigns.
Okay, so he just wants to know the verbiage in what he's sending out. Again, so what'd you say that gentleman's name was?
Lewis.
Lewis. Yeah, email me, brother. Mike@loveohioliving.com, and I will share our Google Drive with you for expireds. And you can dig through it and pull out. Everything is segregated to phone, email, text, social media, and mail. So it's pretty easy for you to go in and grab that. And I'm, like I said, full transparency. I'm happy to provide that to all my teammates.
Sweet. Said bond.ca is not linked to anything. So that link for.
Thanks. Let me look at it again.
So we'll get that over to you guys.
It might be bond.co. I'm sorry. Tell them bond.co.
On.co. There you go. Perfect. Got it. It's there. Sweet. All right.
Yep.
Mike's postcards. We're going to get that. So Hunter's asking, considering that most of the time you do not get a person at the first time you call the number, when do you recommend to call back? And I want you to touch on this. This is a great point. When do you call back? And I think Hunter might have missed that at the beginning. But then also, are you leaving a message? And how often would you call the same number?
Yep. Okay, so this is a great segue. Remember I told you I was going to save my very best nugget to last?
That's right.
And so that's a great question. So first question was, do we leave a message? And the answer is no. In most cases, we will not leave a message, especially on the initial dial, because if we try and call back after that and they've listened to the message, then, they start to think this person's a creeper. We typically don't leave a message. Now, on that third dial, okay, so if we haven't gotten a hold of them in the morning and we didn't get them at lunch, on the third dial, we will leave a message and we will say, hi, this is Mike Wall. I had a question about your property. Can you call me back?
Yep.
And so, that in most cases, very rarely are people going to call back, but we want to try and pique their curiosity. So, but here's the best, if you don't take anything else from this, other than this bit of information that I'm going to give you right now. I started calling, and I don't, this is what my disclaimer here is if this is illegal in your state, then void where prohibited. So the biggest thing that if we're playing that 70% of expireds list with the first agent that they talk to, I started calling at 7:30 or 7:45 every morning. Yep. And so people have this, every time I talk to another agent and I told them that, they were like, oh my gosh, there's just no way I could call that early. You know what I mean? And the reality of it is, I had more pleasant conversations at 7:30 or 7:45 than I ever did after 8 o'clock, man. So drop the limiting belief that you can't call somebody before 8 o'clock. Now, I will tell you this, because I know this to be true. You cannot tee up a dialer before 8 a.m. in the morning. There is a federal law prohibiting that. But it doesn't prohibit you, I believe, from picking up the phone and peck dialing. So if you don't take anything else but that will net you more expired listings than anything else that I've talked to. Because what you're doing is you're playing the odds that 70% of people, expired listings, they are going to do business with the first agent that they talk to. And we talked about the components of why that is, right? Because number one is they're going to be more open, more forthright with you because they haven't talked to anybody else. And the important piece of that, as we talked about, is that you're going to find out what their selling cycle is. So their listings expired. You can find out motivation. You can find out when they plan on relisting it. And the important component of that, right? You said the fortunes and the follow-up, right, John? So if they're telling you when to follow up, then they're essentially telling you how to list their property. You know what I mean? So then what you do is you figure out what your follow-up plan is going to be based on that timeline.
Love it. Just add to there what Hunter was asking. So definitely no messages there. If anything, it's just to kind of pique their curiosity to get them to call you back. But I wouldn't do it the first time either. And then constantly just keep calling that number, like you mentioned. You had your regimen. If you weren't on appointment, morning, noon, and evening, being able to hit that number.
Yeah, and what I don't want to overlook either is the fact that what happens to a lot of these initial conversations is then they fall into your pipeline where they're not a new expired, so they become it's a different phone call every time that you call them. And what happens is the more you talk to them, the more they warm up, right? So when you make an initial expired call, I don't want to say it's a cold call because you do know that it's cold in the fact that you haven't built any rapport or a relationship with them, but you know that they're selling a property, right? We know that. But what happens is when you make that initial contact and you develop that rapport is then the next time you call, it's warmer. And then the next time you call after that, it's warmer, right? And so what you're doing throughout that process between when the property expired and when they decide to relist it is you're building rapport. Right. And you're doing that not with, hey, are you ready to list your house? Hey, are you ready to list your house? You're doing that with what we talked about before, which is all these other components like email, right? Providing value. So, social media, so mail, right? So you don't necessarily have to hit up somebody with, hey, let me list your house. But if you're doing a retargeting ad, hey, you might take a picture with somebody you closed and expired with and write just a quick story about it. And say, hey, this is Bob and Sue. Their house expired after being on the market for a year. We took the listing and sold it in 30 days, right? And then you run that ad in front of your custom audience that you created with the data you have from Vulcan 7. You see what I'm saying? So you're going to get mind share. And so so people mistake that with, hey, I got to call them and ask them to list their house with me, when in reality, then you're just trying to grab mind share so that you can stay on their timeline so that when they do think about selling, they think about you.
I love it, man. You nailed a bunch of different things there, especially hot buttons for us. And the one thing that kind of thinking about there from a mind share. That's why that force multiplier effect is so critical. That we're bombarded with what 3,000 or so, whatever it is, statistically distractions per day, and how are you going to get their attention? And everybody's attention's grabbed in a different way. So phones are absolutely, I think they're absolutely mandatory, critical element of this. And man, there was something else that you said that I don't know. I just want to make sure everybody picked up on, is that going after listings is the greatest leverage. Mike, man, you were working corporate America and had over 40 listings in inventory. That's not, you're not doing that with buyers, right? That would not have happened, right? Life would have, life would not have been good at that point. So it's just creating the most amount of leverage, but also something to think about, guys, is that your expires and your FSBOs, they have the highest probability of listing with an agent and are the closest to making the cash register ring. And that's what we lose sight of. It's like, man, these guys are right here. They have a motivation. They want to sell. They are going to have the highest probability of relisting and working with us as an agent. And they're the closest that we have that are going to work, that are going to make the cash register ring. And, just one last thing on the fortunate and the follow-up is that most agents absolutely suck at follow-up because it's the discipline and the delayed gratification. They're going after their next hunt and kill. They're making one call and moving on and never calling back again. So you win if you just schedule a task to follow up and stay consistent, stay persistent. Mike, you said that word a couple times. Stay persistent in your activities, and you guys are going to win more times than you won't.
Absolutely. I agree, man.
Hey, so David asked, man, no affiliate codes. The only thing I know with RedX is that you can't buy Onyx data off the shelf. You have to call their sales team. So just, pick up the phone and call them and just let them know that, you're connected and associated with Jay and Michael at NAEA, and they'll hook you up with the Onyx data. It's just augmented data. It's the best data that they have. And so that, no affiliate codes. They're not going to give you a discount. Shoot, we don't get a discount for it either, but you can just call them up. I don't know anything on Mojo, Mike. I don't know if you can get a discount or anything with Vulcan 7.
Yeah. All I can say, brother, is when you start selling expired, you won't need a discount. Right. You have plenty of money.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Cool. So, man, good stuff. Yeah, Jim, take action. Best info you gave me. Stop overthinking it. And it really is, right? We want to complicate the process, and it's not that complicated. Not at all. Cool. Any other things, anything that you want to kind of wrap people up with to kind of send them on their way? I just, that last point, again, was, and I'm going to sound like I'm beating a dead horse here, but like Nike said, it's just do it, man. At the end of the day, you already have everything you need in the chair you're sitting in right now, or on the treadmill you're on listening to this. Listen, you've already got everything you need to go out and make it happen for expires. There's no excuses other than you're just not willing to do it. So, it's 1:55 in the afternoon where I'm at today. You've still got an opportunity to go make expired calls today. So don't say I'll start tomorrow. Start today, man. That data, everything you need is out there for you right now. And just draw a line in the sand and say, from today forward, I'm going to make expireds an integral part of my business, and I'm going to start today, not tomorrow. I'm going to start today. Absolutely, man. Mike, I appreciate you, and man, amazing call. Thank you for really getting down in the trenches with everybody and really being a true expert mentor and helping everybody out today. For all of you, guys on the call or listening to the recording with us, give Mike some love, share some love in the Facebook group. If you have any other comments, absolutely share your biggest takeaway, your biggest nugget. We absolutely appreciate it. These amazing people inside of, that are jumped in and been an expert mentor for us so far, and just sharing tons and tons of gold. Give them some love. Make sure we do that, and share your biggest takeaway. And also, if you guys are on listening to the call or listening to the recording, if you really want to add value and also be an expert mentor yourself, man, reach out to me. We would love to get you in the lineup and keep rocking. Mike, man, again, thank you. Thank you guys for jumping on, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate it. Let me give one shameless plug here real quick, man, because we just started a new podcast called The Agent Revolution. It's Agent Revolution Podcast. And so far I've had Al Stasic, I've had Jay Kinder, I've had Kyle Whistle, Dan Beer, Rowena Patton. I've had some people bringing the boom, man. And so you guys can go over to Stitcher or to iTunes and subscribe. That would be really helpful. Support your EXP family.
Yeah, for sure. And then get in there and give Mike some love, give him some reviews, and keep that acceleration on that podcast going. Sweet. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.
Thanks, brother.